The box was already open when I walked into the kitchen. She wasn't supposed to open it yet. That's what she promised. But there it was, half crumpled on the counter, the plastic tube sticking out like a loaded weapon, and beside it the print. Out. I didn't say a word. I just watched her stare at it, unmoving. She didn't notice me at first. She was frozen. Eyes locked on a highlighted line that would in under 15 seconds become the reason I stopped sleeping at night. Then she turned her head slow, almost robotic. Her lips moved like they were trying to form a joke but forgot how. "To laugh, Dad," she said. You're not my real." I didn't hear the rest. My ears had started ringing. The kitchen felt like it folded in on itself. Every drawer, every pan, every photo on the fridge blurred into meaningless clutter. I couldn't look at her, my daughter, my child, my heartbeat for the last 18 years, because suddenly a stupid piece of paper was telling her that I wasn't any of those things. I was what? A roommate? A mistake? She tried to hand it to me. I didn't take it. She whispered, "It's probably wrong, right? These things mess up all the time." That's what I wanted to hear, that it was an error, that she just got the results mixed up. She accidentally sent in the dog sample instead of hers. But behind her, standing in the hallway like a shadow trying to disappear into the wallpaper, was her mother. And the look on her face told me everything. She knew. Not for a day, not for a week. She knew for years. I stared at her. No words, no expression. Just a slow, invisible crumbling from the inside out. I wasn't ready for a conversation. I wasn't ready for any of it. So I left. I left the kitchen. I left the paper. Left the dad title behind on the table where she dropped it like it meant nothing. I locked myself in the garage and sat on the cold floor for 2 hours. I stared at the dusty boxes labeled Christmas and old books and Aria's baby clothes, and it hit me. I don't even know if I packed those clothes for my daughter or someone else's. That night, the house was too quiet. My wife knocked on the door, said we needed to talk. I didn't answer. She knocked again, said it wasn't what I thought. I still didn't answer because the truth is, I wasn't ready to ask the question that had been clawing at my throat since the moment our daughter said, "You're not my real," is. And worse, why did you lie to me for 18 years? I wish I could say I slept that night. Instead, I sat in the dark staring at the glow of the garage light leaking under the door, wondering how much of my life had been a lie and how long she'd been rehearsing her silence for this exact moment. I wasn't angry, just hollow. And hollow is a dangerous thing to become when your entire identity was built around a family you might never have really belonged to. She waited until the lights were off, until I'd finally come back inside and collapsed onto the far end of the bed without saying a word. The kind of silence that says, "Don't touch me, don't ask me anything, don't lie to me again." But of course she spoke anyway, carefully, slowly, like every word was being measured for damage control. She said it was for fun, just a test. My wife whispered in the dark. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe loud enough to break the stillness. She kept going. I didn't know she'd go through with it. Her voice cracked at the end like she was hoping I'd soften, but I didn't. "Not this time," I said. "Did you know?" She went quiet, the kind of quiet that screams yes, even if she doesn't say it out loud. I turned my head toward her just enough to see the outline of her face and the moonlight bleeding through the window. "Tell me the truth. Did you know?" Her fingers twisted into the blanket. She nodded. "I found out when she was a baby. I wasn't sure at first, but then she started to grow and I cut her off." "How long were you planning to wait?" "Forever." She didn't answer that one, probably because she already had. Her plan had always been silence. She sat up in bed, pulling her knees to her chest like she was the victim. That's what broke me most. The performance, the practiced fragility, the tears that came too quickly, too perfectly. I'd seen this version of her before during arguments. When she didn't want to admit she was wrong, when she wanted me to back down first. Only this time she didn't realize I wasn't playing the same game anymore. "You said she was mine," I said, my voice low and steady. "You are her father? You are?" She shot back. "No, I was the father until today. Now, I'm just the guy who paid for braces and taught her how to drive. She winced like I'd hit her, even though all I did was finally say something true. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, to shake the walls until they gave me answers. But all I could do was stare at the ring on her finger and wonder how many lies had been slipped on with it. Then came the worst part. She said I didn't cheat on you. Not in the way you think. It happened before we were serious. I didn't know I was pregnant at first. I thought it was yours. So you gambled. She stayed silent. You gambled my entire life. Her eyes finally met mine. Watery, swollen, unrecognizable. It was one mistake. I chose you. I built a life with you. That means something. Stood up. No, that means you made a decision for me without asking. You lied for nearly 2 decades every single day. Did you know? How many nights I stayed up when she was sick? How many hours I worked overtime so she could go to that stupid art camp? She tried to speak, but I didn't want to hear her voice anymore. And now she's the one carrying the guilt. She thinks she broke us. She doesn't even realize it was broken the moment you decided I didn't deserve the truth. That was when I left the room again. For the 3rd time that night, but this time, I didn't go to the garage. I went to Arya's room. She was awake, sitting on her floor, headphones around her neck, holding that same test result in both hands like it was cursed. Her eyes were red, and she looked more like a stranger than ever before. When she saw me, she said, "I shouldn't have done it. I didn't mean to ruin everything." I knelt in front of her, took the paper from her hands, and tore it clean down. The middle? You didn't ruin anything. You just exposed something that was already broken. She started crying, not soft tears, not movie scene tears, real shaking sobs that cracked right through me. And when I hugged her, it felt different. Like I was holding on to the only part of my life that still made sense, even if she wasn't mine on paper. I didn't sleep again that night, but I did something else. I dug through the attic, found an old photo album, and opened it up to the earliest. Pictures of her. Baby photos, first steps, her in my arms, her clinging to my finger like I was her whole world. And I stared at those images until sunrise, wondering who her real father was and whether he even knew she existed. Because tomorrow I was going to find him. Not out of revenge, but because the only way to untangle this mess was to pull every rotten root from the ground, even if it meant watching everything else collapse. The next morning, the house felt like a museum, silent, cold. Every room still held the shape of our family, but none of it felt real anymore. I watched Arya eating cereal at the kitchen table like it was any other day. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her eyes looked hollow, distant, like the floor had dropped out beneath her and she hadn't stopped falling yet. She kept glancing toward the hallway like she was waiting for her mom to appear, or maybe hoping she wouldn't. I sat across from her and said the only thing that felt honest, "You didn't do anything wrong." She didn't respond right away. Then she whispered, "I don't even know who I am anymore." That broke me more than anything. I wanted to grab her and shake the guilt out of her chest. I wanted to tell her 1,000 times that she was still my daughter, no matter what that DNA test claimed. What really tore at me was the truth I couldn't say out loud. I didn't know who I was anymore either. Once she left for school, I sat in my office and stared at a blank search bar for over an hour, just blinking at the cursor. I knew the man's name, Brent Kessler. She'd finally said it reluctantly in a whisper like it tasted sour in her mouth. I hadn't seen him since the early 2000s. He was a face from another life. We were all in the same circle back then. College, parties, early jobs, messy first apartments. I even remember him coming to our engagement party. He gave us a toaster. I still have it. Every time I used it, I thought it was just a dumb appliance. Turns out it came from the man who gave my wife a baby. Eventually I typed his name. First just on Google, then social media. It wasn't hard to find. It's the kind of guy who never left. Town, who got older, but still wore the same stupid grin in every picture. And just like that, I found out he worked at a car dealership on the east side of town, sales manager, smiling in every photo like he didn't have a clue about the ticking time bomb he helped plan in my life 18 years ago. I didn't tell Helen what I was planning. I didn't even tell Arya. I just drove. My hands were shaking the entire Wave Air. It's not from rage, from something worse. Dread. I wasn't sure what I'd do when I saw him. Was I going to scream, punch him, collapse? But when I walked through those sliding glass doors, it was none of those things. He didn't recognize me at first. Just gave me the salesman smile and said, "Hey there. Looking for something reliable today?" I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "I think we already have something in common." He blinked, tilted his head like a confused dog. Sorry. I reached into my jacket, pulled out a photo, one I had taken. From Arya's baby album, at 6 months old, drool on her chin, sitting on my shoulders. "I think this might be your daughter." The color drained from his face. He stared at the photo, then at me, then back to the photo, and suddenly he looked like a man who couldn't breathe. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. I stepped closer. "Tell me, you slept with Helen right before we got married. She never told you?" "She never told me either. But our daughter just found out through a test, the kind you can order online for $20. He swallowed hard. I darted to the office behind him. Like he wanted to run, I said, "Don't worry. I'm not here to fight you. I just want answers, because I've lived 18 years thinking I was someone I'm apparently not." Bren stammered. I swear I didn't know. She never said anything. We hooked up once, maybe twice, but it wasn't. I didn't think yet. I didn't think either. He sank into a chair beside a display desk. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, staring at the photo like it was a crime scene. "You need to understand something," I said. "She's a kid. Brilliant, heartbroken kid who just had her identity ripped away from her. I don't care what you do now, but if you ever try to reach out to her, if you ever come near her, it won't be to play, Dad. That role's taken, no matter what a piece of paper says." His hands trembled as he nodded. "I understand." I left without another word. On the drive home, I kept replaying his face in my head. The horror, the guilt, the panic. Part of me wanted to feel satisfied to know that he was just as shocked as I was, but I didn't. It didn't fix anything. It didn't make the years feel real again. It just added another layer to the mess. When I walked back into the house, Helen was in the kitchen sipping coffee like it was any other day. She looked at me and asked, "Where did you go?" I looked right at her and said, "I went to meet the man who helped you build a lie." She didn't flinch. She just looked down at her mug, like she couldn't bear to meet my eyes. I said, "I think it's time we told Arya everything, not just what she found out. All of it." Helen looked up. "Are you sure?" I nodded because if we don't, she'll write the rest of the story herself, and it'll be worse than the truth. We waited until after dinner. That was the plan, if you could call it that. We just sat there, Helen and I, barely touching our food, while Arya poked at her pasta like it might reveal a way to rewind time. She barely looked up from her plate. I could tell she was still carrying the weight of it, like she'd taken the entire blame of our crumbling marriage and stuffed it into her backpack beside her textbooks. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say over and over in my head, in the car, in the shower, but when I finally opened my mouth, none of those words came out. Instead, I just said, "Arya, we need to tell you everything. No more missing pieces." She didn't blink, didn't lift her head, but I saw her grip her fork tighter. Helen reached for my hand across the table. I didn't take it. I leaned forward and started. "What you found in that test, it wasn't a mistake. It's real, and it's not your fault. But there's more to it than you know." Arya looked up slowly. Her voice was quiet but sharp. "How long have you known?" I looked at Helen. This was her moment. She had to own it for once. Helen took a shaky breath and said, "I've known since you were a baby." I didn't want to believe it at first. I convinced myself it didn't matter, that love would fix it, that it would stay buried. Ariel's face didn't move. Her voice cracked. "So you lied to both of us." "For 18 years, Helen tried to speak again, but Arya cut her off, voice rising. "You lied to him. You lied to me. Let me grow up thinking I knew who I was. And now what? You just expected it to never come out." "I was scared," Helen said. Her voice brittle. "I didn't want to lose what we had. I didn't want to destroy everything, but you did. You destroyed it the moment you decided not to tell the truth. I wanted to stop it to ease the pressure in the room, but there was no diffusing this. It needed to erupt. I met him, said softly. Arya looked at me startled. Who? Your biological father? His name is Brant. We knew each other once a long time ago. He had no idea. He seemed just as blindsided as I was. Her eyes went wide. You actually met him? I nodded. I needed to see it for myself to know if he even knew you existed. He didn't. He looked like someone had punched the ground out from under him. She looked down at her plate again, and she pushed it away like the very sight of it made her sick. I stood up and knelt beside her chair. Listen to me. Nothing has changed between us. You are my daughter. You always will be. But if you need to know him, or if you don't, that's your choice. It's not mine, not your mother's. She wiped a tear off her cheek. And what about us? Are you two still together? Helen answered before I could. I don't know, she said. I hope so. But I know I broke something. I finally spoke the words I hadn't said out loud yet. I moved into the guest room. Arya flinched just slightly, her hands curled into fists. I feel like I'm in someone else's life, like I walked into the wrong house. I wanted to tell her it would pass, that the storm would clear, but I couldn't. Lie like Helen had. So I just said then, let's rebuild it. But this time, with everything on the table. No more secrets. She didn't speak after that. She just nodded, a tired, defeated nod. And then she stood up and went in her room. Helen didn't move. She sat there with tears in her eyes, staring at the empty chairs like she'd only just realized how far the damage had spread, not just to me, but to all of us. Later that night, I passed Ariel's door. It was cracked open, just a sliver. I paused, debated whether I should knock, but then I heard her whispering on the phone. I don't know what to do. No, he's not mad. I mean, he should be, but he's just broken. I didn't hear who she was talking to. Maybe a friend, maybe someone from school. But those words haunted me. Broken. That's what I'd become in her eyes. And she wasn't wrong. I walked to the guest room and sat on the bed in the dark. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I didn't belong in my own family. And that's when my phone lit up. A message from Brent. I've been thinking about our talk. If you ever want to meet again, just to talk, I'll be here. I stared at the screen. My hand hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to delete it to ignore him forever. But a thought entered my head that wouldn't leave. What if Arya wants to meet him, and I'm the one standing in the way? I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either because I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. I don't know why I didn't block his number. Maybe part of me wanted to keep that door cracked open just in case Arya needed it. Or maybe I was just too exhausted to make another decision. Every choice lately felt like pulling teeth with numb hands. But the next day, that door didn't just crack open. It got kicked in. It started with a knock at the door around 2 p.m. I was home alone, sitting in the den trying to pretend I could focus on work. My laptop screen had been frozen on the same spreadsheet for over an hour. The knock wasn't aggressive, just insistent. I opened the door and froze. It was Brent. He stood there holding a manila envelope. I sunk in his shirt untucked like he'd rushed out of work in a panic. I didn't invite him in. I just stared at him from behind the screen door. I'm sorry, he said, already holding up a hand. I know I shouldn't be here, but I didn't know how else to do this. I opened the door just wide enough to step outside. You're... Right, you shouldn't be here. He nodded like he agreed. I just wanted to give you this. Handed me the envelope and backed off immediately like it was radioactive. I had a test done, one of those at home once. I needed to be sure. Really? Think I care about your DNA at this point? I asked. He didn't flinch. No, but she might. If she ever wants to know for sure, it's all in there. I didn't say thank you. I didn't even look at the envelope. I was too focused on the swirling tension in my gut, like I was about to step on a mine and didn't know which direction would blow everything up again. Then he said something I didn't expect. She deserves the truth. All of it. I narrowed my eyes. You think we haven't been through enough? Bren swallowed. There's more I didn't tell you about Helen. My heart thudded. She didn't just disappear from my life when she got pregnant. I tried to reach out months later, but she blocked me. I thought maybe she'd moved on. But the truth is, I think she knew. I think she always knew the baby might be mine, and she wanted to erase me before anyone could find out. My mouth went dry. I felt like I was about to throw up, but the rage kept it down. You're telling me this now? Why? Because Arya deserves the whole truth, and you do too. I'm not trying to take her. I'm not trying to be dad. I just wanted to. Say that before you throw that test in the trash. I didn't respond. I took the envelope, turned around, and shut the door behind me. That night, Helen came home late. She started working extra shifts again, or so she claimed. I couldn't even keep track of what was real anymore. Arya was in her room, earbuds in, painting something on a stretched canvas that looked like a storm tearing through a city. I sat across from Helen at the kitchen island and slid the envelope. Toward her, he came to the house. She blinked. What? Brent. He showed up today uninvited. Said he got tested. Said you blocked him when he tried to reach out back then. Said you knew.
Us.
Her shoulders tensed. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. The envelope had stopped short. He's lying, is he? Yes, she insisted louder now. I didn't block him. I didn't even think he'd care. We weren't serious. It wasn't. She cut herself off, realizing how flimsy her argument sounded. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Too late. She leaned back in the chair and buried her face in. Her hands, I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could protect you. Oh, you protected yourself? She looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. Do you want to leave me? I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. That question had been echoing in my mind since the night Arya handed me the test. I didn't know what leaving even meant anymore. Leaving Helen? Leaving the house? Leaving the last 18 years behind like they were a movie I could shut off? Arya deserves peace, I said. And you and I, we can't give it to her in this mess. Not like this. That night, I sat down with Arya again. It's the two of us. I told her about Brent's visit, told her about the envelope, the second test, the confirmation. She didn't react the way I expected. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just asked, "Do I have to meet him?" I shook my head. No, that's your choice. Nobody will force you. She looked down at her hands for a long time. I don't want to meet him right now. I don't care what the test says. You're my dad. It should have felt like healing. It should have brought relief. But instead, it just made me feel smaller, like I didn't deserve her loyalty, like I'd failed at everything except being her dad, and that one success was built on a lie someone else created. Then she looked at me and said something that still hasn't left my mind. But if you leave, Mom, I want to go with you. I stared at her. You don't have to choose between us. She nodded. But I already did, and that's when I realized the damage Helen caused didn't just fracture our marriage. It made our daughter choose between the two people she trusted most. And trust is something you only get once. The next morning, Helen found her suitcase by the stairs. It wasn't mine. It was Eros. She didn't say a word. She just zipped it closed, handed me her paint kit, and asked if we could go. Not forever. Just away from the noise. We didn't go far. Just a small lake cabin I hadn't used in years. Inherited from an uncle I barely knew, it was modest. One bedroom, no Wi-Fi, barely any cell service, but it was quiet. That's what we needed more than anything. Silence without guilt, time without tension. A space where Arya didn't have to hear her mother cry through walls and I didn't have to pretend not to hear it. The first day we got there, we didn't unpack. We didn't talk much either. We sat on the porch, both of us staring at the trees like they held answers we couldn't put into words. It was surreal sitting next to her in the fading light, knowing she still trusted me despite everything. It felt like being handed a fragile glass sculpture, beautiful, delicate, and one careless move from shattering.
Oh.
On the second morning, she made pancakes. Said she remembered me teaching her how to flip them when she was 7. I tried to smile. I really did. But it twisted something in my chest. That memory was mine, ours. And yet now there was this shadow hovering over it. Like someone had taken a black marker to the edge of every cherished moment we'd ever shared. By day 3, the silence finally broke. We were skipping stones on the lake when Arya asked, "If you'd known back then, would you have stayed?" That question hit me like a slap. She wasn't looking at me. She just kept her eyes on the ripples in the water. I hesitated, not because I didn't have an answer, but because I knew my answer would hurt no matter how I said it. I don't know, I admit. I want to say yes. I want to believe that I loved your mom enough to forgive something like that. But the truth is, I don't think I ever had the chance to decide. She nodded slowly. That's how I feel too. Sat in silence again, this time heavier. And then she said something I didn't expect. I want to meet him. I turned to her, startled. Brent, she nodded. Not because I need a new dad. I need to see for myself. Need to know what part of me came from him. And I want you there if you can. I hesitated. Every fiber of my body screamed to say no. I wanted to protect her, shelter her from the awkwardness, the emotional minefield, the risk that he might disappoint her in ways she hadn't even imagined yet. But I couldn't say no, not after everything she'd endured because of someone else's choice. Okay, I said. We'll set it up together. The next day, we drove back into town. I called Brent. He didn't answer on the first ring or the second, but on the third, his voice came through. Hesitant, breathless, like he'd been expecting this call every day since the last one. I told him Arya wanted to meet, didn't ask questions, just said name the place. We agreed to meet at a public park. Neutral ground, somewhere open, safe, no pressure. I didn't know what I expected. An emotional outburst, a DNA match confirmation speech, a tearful apology, but Brent was just quiet, nervous. He sat on the bench as we approached, his eyes locked on Arya like he couldn't believe she was real. Arya didn't say anything for the first minute. She just stood there, hands in her hoodie pockets, watching him like she was trying to recognize a face she'd never seen before. Then she said, "You have my eyes." Brent gave a soft laugh. I noticed that. Another long pause. Then she sat down across from him. I stayed standing. I couldn't bring myself to sit beside the man who had unknowingly upended my world. I hovered a few feet away, heart pounding like I was watching my daughter on stage, waiting for the cue to rush in and save her. But she didn't need saving. She asked him questions about his life, his work, what he used to do when he was her, age, whether he liked dogs, whether he'd ever painted anything. She kept it casual, surface level. You'd never know that the conversation was laced with emotional landmines. And Brent, he handled it well. He didn't overstep, didn't try to claim anything. He didn't apologize too much, just answered honestly, carefully, respectfully, until Arya finally asked, "Did you love my mom?" Brent looked stunned. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he said, "No, not the way she needed. We were never in love. It wasn't that kind of thing. But I wish I had known you existed. I would have wanted to know." Arya nodded. "I'm glad you didn't." Brent blinked, clearly caught off guard. She looked at me, then back at him. "Because if you had known, then I might not have grown up with the dad I had, and I wouldn't trade that for anything." I had to turn away. My throat burnt. I wasn't ready to cry in front of him. After that, she stood up and said she was ready to go. Brent didn't stop us. He didn't beg for a second chance. Just said, "Thank you for letting me meet you." Arya gave a soft nod. "Take care of yourself." And just like that, it was over. In the car on the way home, she was quiet again, but not the heavy kind of quiet from before. It was something calmer, lighter. She looked out the window and said, "I think I'm done wondering now." I reached over and squeezed her hand. We were almost home when she turned to me and said, "You should know something." "What's that?" I asked. She smiled just a little. I never called him Dad in my head. Not once. The house smelled like lavender when we got home. Not subtle either. It was overwhelming. Helen had lit every candle she could find. The kind you burn when you're trying to cover up the scent of something worse, or when you're trying to convince everyone that things are under control when they clearly aren't. She was sitting on the living room couch when we walked in, arms crossed tightly over her chest, like she was holding herself together with invisible duct tape. Her suitcase was by the door. Not Aries this time, not mine. Hers, but her eyes weren't on me. They were fixed on our daughter. "You're back early," she said softly. Arya didn't reply. She walked straight to the stairs and paused. Just long enough to say, "I'm tired. I'll be in my room." When her door clicked, shut upstairs. Helen stood up and looked at me like I was a stranger who'd broken into her home. "So how was it?" I stared at her for a beat. She met him, asked questions, got answers, handled it better than either of us. Helen nodded slowly like she already knew. "And what did you say? Did you hold her hand the whole time? Make me the villain?" "No," I said. "You did that part all by yourself?" She flinched, then her voice cracked. "I'm still her mother." I felt something rise in my chest that I hadn't said aloud until now. "Then maybe you should have protected her from the one thing she can't unlearn." She looked down, biting her lip like she wanted to scream, but was trying not to. "You think I haven't been dying inside every day since she found out? You think this has been easy for me? I made one mistake, and I've paid for it every second since one mistake," I said, almost laughing. "A mistake is dropping your keys, and you lied to me for 18 years. You built our life with me on a secret so massive that it's still detonating." I was scared. "No, you were selfish." That landed harder than I expected. She sat back down, this time slowly, like the weight of everything was finally settling on her. But instead of arguing, she did something she hadn't done before. She told the truth. I knew from the beginning. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew. I blocked him. I cut him out before he ever even had the chance to find out, because I saw what kind of man you were becoming. And I didn't want to lose that. You didn't lose me. Said you never had me. You had a version of me that believed in the life we were building. You had the trust. You had the love. No, you've got candles. She wiped her face roughly and then said, "I put my job on hold. I packed my things. I told HR I might take a leave of absence. I'm trying to do what? Is to fix it, to show you that I'll do whatever it takes." And then she pulled out an envelope. I was tired of envelopes, but she opened it for me and slid the paper across the coffee table. It was a handwritten letter to Arya. "I haven't given it to her yet," Helen said. "I've rewritten it a dozen times, but I need her to know the truth from me. Not through you, not from Brent, not from a test. I want her to know I'm not running away." From this, I looked down at the letter. The words were raw, honest, painfully honest. She admitted everything. The timeline, the choice, the years of silence. She didn't defend herself. She didn't try to justify it. She just owned it. And for a second, I saw the woman I fell in love with, but it wasn't enough. "I can't live in this house with you," I said. Helen closed her eyes. "I figured I'm not trying to punish you, but I can't breathe in here. Not when every wall reminds me of what wasn't real." She nodded. "I'll leave tonight." That night, Arya came into my room while I was folding laundry. Her face was calm, tired but calm. "She's leaving, isn't she?" I nodded. She told me she wrote. "A letter she did." Arya sat on the edge of the bed. "Are you okay?" I looked at her and gave the smallest smile. "No, but I will be." Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. "Do you ever think maybe none of us are okay? Maybe we just learn how to live inside the wreckage?" I wrapped my arm around her shoulders and held her tightly. "Maybe, but maybe the wreckage clears too. Maybe it takes time. Maybe all we need is a little air and a little distance." At midnight, Helen left. No dramatic goodbye, no weeping in the driveway. She just closed the trunk of her car, looked up at Ariel's dark window, and drove away. The candles still burned long after she was gone. And as I stood at the window watching her disappear down the road, I realized something I never expected. The house finally felt still. Not peaceful. Not yet, but honest. And for the first time in weeks, I believed we could rebuild something from what was left. The following week was quiet in a way that didn't feel heavy anymore. No more whispered arguments behind closed doors, no more walking on eggshells. No more unexpected envelopes or truth bombs waiting around corners. Just me and Arya navigating a new rhythm. It's broken in places, yes, but slowly becoming our own again. She started playing music in the mornings, low volume, soft acoustic stuff. I'd find her sketching on the porch or buried in a pile of art supplies on the living room floor. She started painting again, this time with colors that weren't just shades of storm clouds. I didn't ask her what they meant. I just let her create. I'd made a decision during those nights lying awake. I wasn't going to define our future by what Helen did. That betrayal, however deep, didn't get to rewrite everything we built, especially not with Arya. She was mine in every way that mattered. No DNA test could change that. And if anything, the past few weeks had proved it more than ever. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Arya came outside with 2 mugs of tea and a small folded note. I took it from her, confused, and opened it. Inside was a hand-drawn image, a child's version of me holding a little girl's hand. Clearly her. There were 2 hearts drawn above our heads, one red, one purple, and underneath, in neat handwriting, were 5 words. "You've always been my father." I didn't even try to stop the tears this time. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I don't want to go backward. I don't want to live in all that pain anymore. I want us to move forward. It's just you and me, however that looks." I nodded, voice shaky. "That's all I want too." The next day, I packed away old photo albums, not to hide them, but to protect them. I didn't need to keep reliving the uncertainty. The memories were still real, even if the foundation beneath them had cracked. And Arya, with every smile, every eye roll, every sarcastic joke, was proof that the love had never been fake. It always been ours, Helen called a week later, just once. She didn't ask to come back. She didn't beg or plead. She just said she was in therapy, that she was trying to rebuild her life, not to erase what happened, but to understand why she let it happen in the first place. She asked if one day, not now, but someday, Arya might want to talk. Just talk. I told her I'd pass the message along, that it was Arya's choice, and that I wished her peace. A month later, I found myself standing beside Arya at her senior art show. Her painting had been selected for the showcase. The piece was bold and strange and haunting. A forest growing through a shattered house, vines bursting through windows, and roots curling up floorboards, but sunlight flooding in through the holes in the ceiling. A title painted in the corner. What was left still grew. Someone asked her what it meant. She pointed to me and smiled. "Ask him. He's the reason I finished." It. And right there in that crowded room full of strangers, I realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't broken anymore. Not fully, maybe, but enough. Enough to stand taller, enough to breathe again, enough to believe that healing, real healing, doesn't mean going back to how things were. It means growing something better out of what survived.